Your voice matters. Share your story with the world. It can inspire someone else. So speak up.
Sometimes, relationships don't end because of lack of love. They end because of lack of communication. Ego creates distance. Silence builds walls. Assumptions destroy what clarity could have saved. If you care about someone, don't let one message be the reason you lose them. Talk, explain, listen. Because love doesn't need perfection. It needs effort, honesty, and the courage to not stay silent. Sometimes the last message you send isn't the one you remember. It's the one that changes everything. It didn't feel like the end. Not at first. It was just another ordinary evening, the kind they had shared 100 times before. Ayesha was sitting on her bed, phone in hand, waiting for Zain's reply. The screen kept lighting up, but not with his name. Minutes stretched longer than they should have. Finally a message came. But it wasn't what she expected. It was short, dry, almost careless. That one message carried a tone she couldn't ignore, or maybe she misunderstood it completely. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed something emotional, erased it. Typed again, erased that too. Her heart was racing, but her pride was louder. Fine, do whatever you want. She hit send. 3 dots appeared on the screen. He was typing. She waited, and waited. Then suddenly, nothing. The typing disappeared. No reply came. At first, she told herself he'd text back. He always did. But that night passed in silence. Then the next day, and the day after that. On the other side, Zain stared at the same message, his jaw tight. He read it over and over, trying to understand how things escalated so quickly. But her words felt final, like a door slammed shut before he could explain. He thought about calling her. He even dialed once, but didn't press the call button. If she cares, she'll reach out, he muttered to himself. Days turned into weeks. Their chat moved lower and lower in the inbox, buried under notifications that meant nothing. But neither of them deleted it. Because deep down, both of them knew. That one message wasn't just a sentence. It was the beginning of their silence. They didn't block each other, because deep down they weren't ready to let go. Silence has a strange way of settling in. At first it feels temporary, like a pause between conversations. But slowly it grows heavier, turning into something neither of them knows how to break. Ayesha tried to move on. Her days were filled with distractions, friends, family, endless scrolling. She laughed at jokes, posed for pictures, and posted moments that looked perfectly fine from the outside. Anyone watching would think she was happy. But late at night, it was different. Her room felt quieter than usual. Her phone felt heavier in her hands. Almost instinctively, she'd open their chat, read old messages, smile at things that once made her laugh. And then, her fingers would start typing. Hey, I was just thinking, can we talk? But every time, she stopped, deleted the words, closed the app. On the other side, Zain wasn't doing much better. He buried himself in work, stretching his days longer than necessary, just to avoid the empty feeling waiting for him at home. His friends noticed he was quieter, but he brushed it off.
It's in these moments we find our
I'm
true
just
strength.
tired, he'd say.
Embrace the journey.
But he wasn't.
And trust yourself.
He was avoiding something he couldn't fix. Every now and then, he'd find himself searching her name. Her profile would appear instantly, like it had been waiting. He'd pause, look at her latest photo, zoom in, as if he could understand her emotions through a screen. She looks fine, he'd whisper, convincing himself. But something didn't sit right. Many times he thought about texting her. Even typed once, "Are you okay?" But then he remembered her last message. Fine, do whatever you want. So he didn't send it. And just like that, 2 people who wanted to talk chose silence instead. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into something that felt permanent. Yet neither of them blocked the other. Neither deleted the chat. Because the truth was simple and painfully clear. They weren't over each other. Of all the places in the world, fate chose the one they couldn't escape. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, the kind you don't think twice about. Ayesha hadn't even planned to go out that day, but her friend insisted. "You need a break. Just come." So she agreed, not knowing that this one small decision would change everything. The cafe was warm and softly lit. The sound of quiet conversations blended with the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the windows. It felt calm, safe, until it didn't. She stepped inside, brushing raindrops off her sleeves, scanning the room for her friend. And then she froze. There he was, Zain, sitting just a few feet away, completely unaware of the storm that had just walked in. For a moment, everything around her blurred. The music, the voices, even the rain, it all faded into the background. Her heartbeat was the only thing she could hear. She thought about turning around, leaving, pretending she never saw him. But before she could move, he looked up, and their eyes met. Time didn't just slow down, it stopped. Months of silence, unanswered questions, and buried emotions rushed back in a single glance. Neither of them smiled, neither looked away. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Zain stood up instinctively, as if his body reacted before his mind could catch up. He hesitated for a second, unsure whether to walk toward her or stay where he was. Ayesha felt the same confusion. So many things left unsaid, and yet no idea where to begin. Finally, he took a step forward. "Hey," he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. She swallowed, forcing a small, controlled smile. "Hey." A simple word, but it carried months of distance. "How have you been?" he asked, even though he wasn't sure he wanted a casual answer. "I've been good," she replied, the kind of good that hides more than it reveals.
I've been thinking
Another
about how
pause
far we've
followed,
come.
not empty,
The journey
just
wasn't
full of
always
everything they
easy,
hadn't
but it
said.
was worth it.
In that moment,
And I
both
believe
of
the
them
best is
realized
yet to
something
come.
undeniable.
No matter how much time had passed, some connections don't fade. They just wait, for the moment you can no longer avoid them. Some conversations are delayed, not because they don't matter, but because they matter too much. They didn't sit together immediately. There was a hesitation, a quiet, invisible wall built from months of silence. But eventually, Ayesha's friend excused herself, sensing something unspoken, and Zain took the empty seat across from her. For a few minutes they kept things safe. Work, daily routines, random memories that felt easier to revisit than the truth. Zain stirred his coffee, though he hadn't taken a sip. Ayesha traced patterns on the table with her fingers, avoiding eye contact. It felt strange, talking like strangers when they once knew everything about each other. Then came the silence again. But this time, it refused to be ignored. Ayesha took a slow breath. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Why didn't you call?" The question hung in the air, heavier than anything they had sent so far. Zain looked up, caught off guard. He didn't expect her to ask it so directly. "I thought you didn't want me to," he replied honestly. Her brows furrowed. "How did you get that from one message?" He let out a quiet sigh. "Ayesha, you said do whatever you want. It didn't feel like anger. It felt like you were done." She shook her head, a mix of frustration and disbelief crossing her face. "I was upset, Zain. I was waiting for you to explain, not disappear." "I didn't disappear," he said, his voice tightening slightly. "I gave you space." "I didn't need space," she responded, louder than she intended. A few people nearby glanced over, but she didn't care anymore. "I needed you to fight for us." That hit him. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair.
We just
"And
need
I
to
needed
pause
you
and
to
breathe.
not push me away
Life's
every time
changes
you were
can be
hurt."
Beautiful if we let them.
Silence again.
I'm learning to embrace
But this
the
one was
journey
different.
and
It wasn't
find peace
avoidance
within.
anymore. It was realization. They both sat there, absorbing the truth they had been too stubborn to see before. It wasn't just one message. It was miscommunication, assumptions, ego. Zain spoke again, softer this time. "I was never okay with losing you. I just didn't know how to fix it without making it worse." Ayesha's eyes softened, the tension slowly melting away. "Neither did I," she admitted. And in that moment, something
I feel so
shifted.
tired, like
Not
I've been carrying
instantly,
this weight
but
forever.
honestly. For
But
the
I know I
first
can
time in
keep
months,
going
they
like
weren't
this.
guessing anymore. They were
to
finally
make a change.
understanding. Some love stories don't
Life
end.
isn't always
They pause,
easy.
waiting for the right moment
But
to
it's in
continue.
those moments we
The rain
find
outside
ourselves.
hadn't stopped. If anything, it had
going.
grown steadier,
You're stronger
like the
than you
world
think.
was quietly
I've
echoing
learned
everything
that
they
the
had
most
just
important
released.
thing is to be true to yourself.
Inside the cafe, things
Don't be
felt
afraid to
different
follow
now.
your dreams.
Lighter.
It takes courage.
Not because
and
everything was
foresight.
magically fixed,
Believe in yourself.
but because the truth was finally out. Ayesha looked at Zain, really looked at him, not through hurt, not through assumptions, but through clarity. He looked the same, yet somehow not. Maybe it wasn't him who changed. Maybe it was the distance that made everything clearer. Zain leaned forward slightly, his voice steady, but sincere. I don't want us to go back to that silence again. No hesitation this time. No ego, just honesty. Ayesha held his gaze, her eyes soft but certain. Then don't let me walk away thinking you don't care. There was a small pause, not awkward, not heavy,
Life
just
isn't
real.
always easy.
I won't, he
But it's
said.
in those
And
moments
for the
we
first
find
time she
our
believed
strength.
him, not because of the words,
going.
but because of the way he
You're
said them.
stronger than you
They
think.
didn't promise perfection.
I feel
They
so
didn't
tired,
pretend
like
things
I've
would
been
never go
carrying
wrong
this weight
again.
Forever.
Instead, they chose something
But I know
stronger.
I can't keep going like this.
Communication,
I
understanding,
need to make a change.
effort. Zain smiled slightly. We were really about to lose everything over one misunderstanding. Not just that, over not talking about it. The rain slowly began to fade, and so did the distance between them. As they stepped out of the cafe together, it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like continuing something that was never truly finished. Not every love story is about never breaking. Some are about breaking, and choosing to come back stronger. They were just stuck between ego and emotion, listening to a silence that screamed louder every day.